think conceptually. Don't look at a gym design magazine or a hotel magazine and say, oh, I like that design, and then do your version of that. Be conceptual, be fearless, be experimental, be exploratory.
In fitness, experience and differentiation is everything. And our guest today is an icon of branding and interior design. Trusted and respected around the world for designing the gyms that break the mold, our guest this week talks about the secrets of creating impactful designs for fitness studios and boutiques. Please join me in welcoming the gym designer and brand architect, Cuoco Black, to the Escape Your Limits podcast.
So we're here in Manhattan at the farm, this is called, with Cuoco Black, extremely talented designer of fitness studios. Is that a good way to?
That's a good way to do it, but I don't define myself as, I don't sort of categorize myself as a gym designer or a fitness center designer, more into what I might call conceptual design. Mm-hmm. So I'm involved with other things in furniture and fine art and other interior type of things. So, but I try to stay more loose with the types of things that I'm involved with, and it keeps me my work more flexible and free, creative.
Why did you choose fitness out of all the?
Well, it was so funny because it's that story of what came first, the chicken or the egg. Yeah. I was actually a designer and an academic. I trained here in New York City, and I went to a gym in New York City. I'll leave out the name of the gym. And I was there, I was training, geez, this gym design is terrible. And I started getting into marketing myself to the fitness industry, and actually my first client was the gym that I was in. I'm not going to say again who it was, but it was an interesting sort of cycle to go from designer. I was a bodybuilder and I was in the gyms, and I was saying, geez, these gyms could do so much better. And then I started marketing to the gyms, and now I'm noted for being one of the guys who does it, one of the people who do it.
What got you into design?
As a child, it sort of came to me when I was young. I was 14 years old. I grew up in a small town called Springfield, Massachusetts. And at 14 years old, I was wallpapering my walls and the ceilings and custom door handles on the doors. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. It was just like, what are you doing? Everybody was like, all my friends were out rolling in the street, and I'm here designing my bedroom. So it just came naturally to me. And I was in university. I was studying, actually was in mechanical engineering, I don't remember, but I was studying sort of on the engineering side. And as I was going through, I was saying, it's not working. There's no connection. And that day that I had this sort of revelation, oddly enough, they were performing what's it called, aptitude test. And I said, okay, let me go in, I'll take the aptitude test. And the scores came back a month later, and I was at the top of the grid for architect design. I said, okay, that's the way you gotta go. And that was how I got into it.
Right. So. And you went on you as a professor, is that right?
I taught at the New York School of Interior Design. I have a BFA with distinction and a professional diploma from the New York School of Interior Design. It's on now, I think it's 86th Street in New York, and I taught at the school, and then I moved out of the city, so I don't teach anymore, but it gave me a good foundation for understanding the technical side of interior design, right, if you will.
And you also traveled with design as well. You've been in Paris and the other places.
Yes, I was fortunate enough as an American to be invited to Paris, France to design for the French. I don't know if your audience knows anything, but an American being asked to design for the French was a challenge, but it went out really well. It was for an organization called the Experimental Cocktail Club, and I lived in Paris for, I think it was 3 months. And when an American gets exposed to Louis XVI's work and everything that's happening in Paris, it resets your needle of what you can do with design. So that kind of shifted my mindset of how I approach design. It's intellectual, it's cerebral, it's creative, it's artistic, and there's also the academic part of it. So there's a lot of technical parts of it, and it's really difficult because it's a mixture of technical with creative, and to blend those two together. And so, for example, lighting design, it's very painterly. If you can describe it that way. So when I came back to the States, I was recalibrated to approach design from a higher standard.
What do you think is the differences then? We spoke off camera about American design, and I suppose, you know, the differences between some of the sort of European design, whether that's in fashion or furniture or architecture. What's your view on the differences, and why do you think there's differences, or is there not really differences, it just depends on who's the design? Tell me.
Well, I think in the States, America's a young country. And I always have to preempt this conversation by saying, within the fitness industry, because we're speaking to, you know, the developers and owners in the fitness industry, that I try not to cast any aspersions onto what other gym brands are doing. The designs are beautiful, they're very nice. However, in the States, there's sort of a loss for culture. I'm Italian, I grew up Italian American, and I'm sort of in touch with my cultural DNA, if that's the way to describe it. So, you know, I look at the work that's happening in the United States. It's very lovely, as I said, it's nice work, but when you travel to Paris and you go to Tokyo and you travel over the world and you start to see in the UK what's happening with design, you realize there's a whole nother pedigree of design that I think American designers, I'm sorry, I can't speak for everyone, just speaking for myself, but I think there's another level that we can reach, and that's sort of what my sort of philosophy is that there was a gentleman by the name of Guy Kawasaki. He was tech evangelist for Steve Jobs twice, and he talked about Apple's philosophy with design. And he said that when Apple develops a project, it can't be a little bit better or twice as good, it needs to be 10 times better. And he says, if it's not 10 times better, it's better sameness. And I love that expression because I think that's one of the challenges that gym developers have here in the States. And I see this globally too. So again, I don't want to be cynical or mean-spirited. But what happens is, in the gym industry, is you get this aesthetic where designer developers, design agencies will borrow some aesthetic concepts, ideas, materials, lightings from Equinox or the W Hotel and some David Barton and maybe a little bit of the Rebel look. And they'll mix that together. And that's lovely. And a lot of people are doing that. And I call that 2.0 design, 1.0 being all the guys are doing gyms that still look like muscle gyms. And again, I'm not being mean-spirited. So when these design agencies working for the developers, gym owners, create these designs, you'll see this blurring of an aesthetic. Sometimes I just literally walk down the street. There was a gym I walked by down the street, and it had the white lockers, and it had the wood on the wall, and it had the white floor, and the boutique furniture. And I was like, you know, how many times are you going to do this? And not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but what happens is it strips a developer, a gym owner, from his own unique brand. So if you're creating a brand or an aesthetic that's similar to any other brands in the marketplace, and there's starting to be a lot that are doing the same things, you know, you've got better sameness, which is an injunction to say that they're all similar but different, and you blur the brand. And so my objective with the developers that I work with is to move them out of that lane and create these concepts. And as I said, I consider myself more a conceptual designer. And so when I meet with a developer, what we try to do is theorize and experiment and explore conceptual ideas of what a gym could be. And if you look at some of the images, and that's why you've called me, because you've seen some of these designs that we've been working on, you can see that it doesn't follow the trend. They're unique, and they're highly branded for the developer's branding platform. And so it reinforces multiple layers of his branding platform, and his or her branding platform, I should say. Am I on this right? I mean, does it make sense?
Yeah. So let's start with design then for a moment. Like, you talk about sort of differentiation and of so you can stand out. But what would you say is the point of design? You know, is it really just to make sure that you're distinctive and how that looks is totally objective, or is there other business reasons? You know, how would you explain the need to invest in it?
Differentiation is one, and retention is another, and marketing is really what I talk about a lot. I always try to advise the developers that I'm working with that what we're talking about really is not decoration and putting materials on the walls and floors. What we're talking about is marketing and marketplace positioning. So if you can create a brand in a marketplace, a gym model in a marketplace where everyone's doing sort of the boutique design, bespoke design, I think it's called in the UK, or they're doing still the 1.0 gyms where everybody's doing the muscle gym look, and you create something that's entirely differentiated from what the others are doing in the marketplace. Fitness consumers' eyes move to that brand, and we've had a lot of success with that because our clients open in demographics that are highly dense with a lot of competitors from every market category, and they go into this marketplace and they become highly successful. Well, where do the customers, where do the members come from? Well, it comes from the other gyms. So it's a combination of marketing and branding and differentiation, to answer your question specifically.
And how do you go about doing that then? So when, in terms of your process, is it important to understand the details of who your clients are trying to go after in terms of, like you say, demographic, what you're doing in there? Does all of those parts play in what it looks like, or are you taking some of those components in isolation? How does that all sort of fit together?
Well, what happens is, it's really interesting because, what happens is a developer will come to us and they say, we want to do a brand like X, Y, and Z is doing, but we don't want to look like them. So what we do is we spend some time for a competitive analysis. Before we even get into the creative part, we look at the brands, the competitors in the marketplace. We study, really because I'm a designer, we study their aesthetics and their design platforms, and it's so easy to pick out the trends that people are doing and say, look at this guy is doing this, which is the same as this guy, and which is this guy over here. And so what happens is there's these templates that are out there. And so once we spend this time defining what the competitors are doing, this is the point of differentiation. I say what we're going to do is we're going to do the opposite of what everyone's doing. And there's a lot of dark, colored lighting, underground gym brands. So I have a client in Massachusetts, and what we decided to do was go the complete opposite direction, and we did a really bright, white, light-colored gym, which is entirely differentiated from the competitors.
So one of the things is that you kind of study what else is out there to make sure that you're distinctive from that.
Yes, distinctive from that.
So what else then would you say that goes into it? So say, for example, I wanted to have like a boxing studio, and I wanted to target like over 50s. Would that come into play then?
It comes into play, but it's different.
Right.
So here's the starting point from the creative process. It's left hemisphere, I spoke about this, left hemisphere, right hemisphere. It's the mixing of the technical with the creative. Most of the developers I work with, I ask them for inspiration. I say, did you see a Hollywood movie that you love? One of our gyms was based on the film Tron Legacy.
Right.
So the design was inspired from this Hollywood film, and a lot of our gyms are. And if you don't know the nuances and the details, what we do is we study the film, we study the sets, the designs of the sets, and from that, we're inspired to take the customer's logo, the client's logo, his brand color scheme, and we start to integrate and inspire an entire new brand model concept that's not been done. Right. So since we're not copying 1.0 gyms that look like gyms or gyms that look like boutique hotels, we're in a lane all by ourselves because we're creating something that's inspired organically from an idea. So this is where I talk a lot about conceptual design. I always talk about conceptual design. All my taglines, most of my PR, most of my marketing, all talks about conceptual design and next generation gyms. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to redirect the industry, or at least the brands that I'm working with, to create these new brands that are moving in a new lane, and they are moving away from what everyone else is doing.
Do you think it's difficult when you're working, or do you have examples where you're working with clients that say, you know, but I've seen Equinox and I like that, and I want to, you know, go up against them?
Every time.
How do you sort of break that
Every time.
thought process?
Well, you know, what I'll do is I have a collage. I have a presentation that I show the developers I work with, and what I've done is I've taken photographs. And again, as I said, I cast no aspersions onto these designs. They're lovely. They're beautiful. I'll take a W hotel and a luxury gym in the US and a luxury gym in the UK, and I'll put a collage together. And I'll show the developer and I'll say, who's who and what are they selling? And they're sort of dumbfounded because you can't tell. It's the blurred brand. It's the aesthetic. They're all doing the wood, and they're doing the wood walls, and they're doing the colored lights. It's beautiful, okay? But when a developer sees in hard time, in real time, that the brand that he thought or the aesthetic that he wanted was beautiful, but everyone else is doing it, resets them. And that's what I do. I spend a lot of time educating the people I work with in the beginning to show them what the industry is doing. This is this lane, this is this lane. Do you want to be in one of these, or do you want to be over here? And I'll have clients that rebuff and push back on that, and they want to stay with what they're doing and what everyone else is doing. And so not all jobs come through.
Right.
And that's okay with me, because I'm finding the archetypes of the developers I'm working with, they're different. They're really aggressive. They're really forward thinking. I use that expression a lot. The developers I work with are really, one of them says, I want to be 50 years ahead of all my competitors. And this is a gentleman who his sales process is when a prospect comes into the gym, he advises them to go visit his competitors' gyms first. And I thought that was bravado. He says, here's my gym. And usually they walk in, and this is what I call the 80-20 rule. I talked to you a little bit about the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule is sort of the Pareto principle. It's sort of an injunction to describe that, from my point of view, that a gym developer should theoretically invest 80% of their construction budget in the design of the reception area. Okay.
Reception area.
In the reception area. So it's a theory, okay?
Right.
But the idea and the design intent is that you make your reception area so innovative and theatrical, because I believe gym spaces should be theatrical and entertainment, dramatic, so that when the fitness consumer walks in, when the prospect walks in, they're sort of like, I've never seen a gym like this before, and you've seen them, and that's why I'm here. And so the purpose of that is to drop their guard, and then allows the sales process to come in. Well, let me show you what else we're doing here and our business model. And it's been a very successful strategy, the 80-20. I got a little bit off because there's so many layers to doing this. And there's so many factors that fall into it. So in other words, what we're working on, what we're not doing, we're not looking at a wall, we're not looking at a floor, we're not looking at a ceiling. We're looking at a brand concept. And everything you put in the gym, the floors, the walls, the ceiling, the lights, the furniture, the colors, the finishes, the materials, everything has to backlink and reinforce the brand concept. Hashtag brand concept. Right. It's not decorating, there's a concept here. And so if you look at some of the related lighting, colors, materials, finishes, reflections, furniture, and some of the brands that we're developing, I'm very passionate about this because I'm in the groove. And the developers, they totally get it. Is that when you put all this together, you get what I think it's called the gestalt, is when the parts, sums of the parts is larger than the whole. Some expression like that. So when all the pieces come together, it becomes bigger than the pieces by themselves.
So design is something that's very subjective. You know, we design products and we'll all sit around the table and everyone will have a slightly different view on it.
Right.
I guess when you're designing you know, like a building kind of with different areas and changing rooms, I guess it can get quite difficult to say, well, you know, should this be white walls and blue lights or something different? Is it, in your experience, and you've obviously had a lot of experience in this, do you sort of lean on the business side to say, look, you know, here's some business goals, this is what we've got to achieve, and let's focus on that? Or are you, look, you know, I'm a designer, I know what I'm doing, here's a trend for this demographic, and this is why we should be doing blue strips or whatever? How does those two parts of left and right brain, or business and creativity, play together?
That's a really good point. The developers I'm working with are really busy. They're really good at running the business side of it. They really know who their demographic is. They know who their competitors are. They know the business model that they need. So I don't need to focus as much on that, but I need to reinforce and strengthen that, amplify that.
Right.
And we do that by creating these brand concepts, and this is what they rely on me. They know ROIs, and they know what their objectives are and what metrics they have to hit.
Yeah.
So we're really brought in as, I should say, as top guns. This is our model, and we want to elevate it beyond what all the others are doing. And so that's where I go back to. It starts with concept development. You can't just decorate the walls and the floors and do what everyone else is doing. You have to have a brand concept, and it creates a platform. So Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, all of these sort of pictorial social media sites become a really important part of the design, because all those images are shared across social platforms. And if the designs are really different and the aesthetics in the gym is different, consumers know that. They see it. Fitness consumers know the difference between a hotel gym and a muscle gym. And so when they see a gym that defies both of those ideas, they say, this is something different. I haven't seen this before. And it's been a grind. It hasn't been easy, and I'm still going uphill and pushing against it.
So would that apply then to people's interests? So I would say, you know, compare me, my younger brother, and my father. You know, we all work out, but we're quite different. You know, so I will like a kind of a bit of a muscle gym, if I'm honest. But you know, there's certain muscle gyms that I like and certain ones I don't. How would you then try and attract me or my dad or my younger brother?
Well, you don't. You know,
You don't.
you've got a limited target market. You
Right.
know, so is it women?
Okay.
You know, between 25 and 40. And so we understand that's part of the competitive analysis that we do with the developers. So you can't hit everybody, but you can hit your market. And this is where what's happening is the boutique and boutique, where the larger brands is now starting to bring in spin and boutique studios. And so they're trying to appeal to a larger demographic. It's done marginally well.
Right.
I said that marginally. I try to be precise with my words. They're doing it, but it can be done better.
And can you, just to sort of carry on that point then, can you by using good design, can you get better at targeting who you're after? Because I guess a lot of cases you go into certain businesses and you don't really know who they're going after. You know, they're very vanilla. If you want to stand out, so you've got this being distinctive, which I get, but also making someone like my wife or me feel as though, yeah, this is my place. Can you achieve that with lighting and walls and things?
Yes, you can do that. For example, I have clients, and we're talking now, where you wanted to get that balance between not being too masculine and not being too feminine. Excuse me if I'm politically incorrect. And there's a conversation about this, is what you're saying. So how do we do this without offending this? And you can create beautiful design without it being florals and pinks. So there's another level that I'm not talking about. It's the skill of the design agency at marrying these different design elements together. What you need is a developer has to sort of frame who that target demographic is, and then within that frame, you can create enough diversity in the design, politically correct, enough diversity in the design to appeal to different target demographics within the same gym brand.
Right. So
But
that
some-
is kind of possible.
Yeah,
to-
it's possible. You need the space. I mean, the smaller the space, the less opportunity you have. But generally speaking, you could be neutral and still do things with lighting, for example. And we haven't got into lighting. Lighting is one of the biggest design elements that gym brands leave on the table when they're developing their concepts for the gyms. Lighting design is probably, I call it a first tier design strategy, is lighting design has to reinforce. People think you put lighting in a nice chandelier of a reception desk, or now chandeliers are on the training floor. No. The lighting has so many characteristics. Color temperatures, it does utility, you got light reflects, light absorbs, it amplifies color, you have Kelvin temperature. You can brand your lighting to colors or geographies or shapes. So within lighting design, there's 7, 8, 9, 10 layers of design that you can bring to it. And again, I'm here because you've seen some of it, and you guys are good. Escape is good. I've seen your work. So you know the lane that I'm talking about how lighting can be, is really an important factor. And I think a lot of developers need to pay more attention to the design agencies they bring in, that they're not leaving anything on the table with the lighting, because it can do so much more to amplify the brand, the club.
What are, in your view, industries that get design right in terms of buildings?
Interiors. On the architectural side, I can say interiors. One of the things, it's so funny. One of the things that I found from my own personal philosophy is I don't scan the interior design industry. I don't go out and look at what hotels and nightclubs and bars and gyms are doing. I'm a purposeful attempt to be in a place where I'm not influenced by other things that are happening. And that's a great place to be, because you're not influenced by what's happening in the industry. The fitness industry, and again, I don't want to be malicious, but I'm an academic, traveled the world, I'm meeting really good developers. The fitness industry in the US can do so much more. And I think, and this is one of the problems that I've tried to study this, and I thought a lot about this, is that why are the gym brands why do they still designing gyms that look like gyms or boutique hotels? I say to myself, why are they doing that? And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I have one proposition, is that the owners and the developers are busy. They're busy running their business. So what do? They turn to their design agency, family, friends, historically who they've used in the past, and they turn that over to the design agency to develop the brand concept. And in a sense, I understand that, but if you have a firm that designs hotels and restaurants and nightclubs, and they're designing your gym, what's your gym gonna look like? And so, and again, I'm trying not to be mean-spirited here. My objective number one is to make the developers, clubs that I'm working with, differentiated, upscale, luxury, really cool, really innovative, really branded. And so I have to say that if you're not doing that, then you're doing what everybody else is doing.
So should a gym look like a gym, like a hotel should look like a hotel, as opposed to a gym look like a hotel? Is that?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I say that. I says, are you selling fitness? Or are you selling a chill nightclub vibe?
Right.
I had a
interesting.
guy from the West Coast, really top personal trainer. And he said, I went into one of those gyms. He said, I felt like falling asleep. That's why I was meeting with him. So, are you selling fitness? Or are you selling?
Interesting point.
It's an interesting point. Again, they're beautiful, but even with the gyms that we're doing, let's talk about what's called space planning. Space planning is where you arrange the rooms, the layouts, the reception areas, the training floor. That's called space planning. Okay, we try to lay out our clients' brands in a way that from the reception area, you see fitness amenities within the view. Might be further down in what I call a major axis. You might see further down in the gym fitness amenities. Whereas in the boutique design platforms, in the brands, you see sofas in the bar and the retail store, but you don't see fitness. And so,
That's interesting.
So I think you can create the luxury boutique, luxury look, but marry it to fitness, and don't divorce them, marry them together.
And so what generally happens in the industry, and we're not interior designers, but we like to help spend time getting that, like you call, space planning right. And I suppose a lot of it generally goes to the equipment manufacturers will do the space planning.
Well, you guys, in a sense.
And to be honest, we don't necessarily even do that,
Right.
because it tends to get, probably the bigger part of the gym gets designed by other people that probably, no disrespect, but they're not space planners. How important is it, or isn't? And again, I'm not sort of being disrespectful for anyone, but in order, if you're creating a concept like you talked about, how important is it to have the flow of not just the locker rooms and everything, but that equipment journey, and how does that fit into the whole story?
That's a great question. I'm working with a group now. Everything is NDA.
Yeah.
So I can't say anything about anybody, anytime, anywhere for the next 20 years. But what's interesting is this is a big box project. Within the meetings, the equipment guy is there. Their internal equipment guy is there.
Right.
The design is directly driven by the marriage of the operations, the equipment, and married together.
Right.
So it doesn't become separate.
Okay.
It becomes integral. Okay. So here's the perfect example. We're working in a space where the reception area is separated from the training floor. But we're doing it in a sense where there's this sense of transparency through this architectural geometry, which I call it, so that even though you're in a reception area and you're in the reception area, the gym is right there beyond, massive gym right there beyond. And so you talked a little bit about the equipment suppliers doing the layouts. That's fine. I think on the smaller clubs you can do that, and they're good and they're competent at that. But when you get into bigger brands and a higher pedigree of aesthetics, the equipment manufacturers, as good as they are, aren't really, I think, positioned to get into any high level of interior design. That's why you call the designers.
Yeah. And so in your view then, if you were trying to create something really special, you would, sounds like an interesting comment, but you would have your internal gym person, you would have your equipment manufacturer, and you'd have your architect, someone collaborating on that.
Yes,
so that
yes.
you've got all those different, like you call it, geometries working together.
Yes, exactly. I have a meeting tomorrow, and the client, I got a text, who do you want at the meeting? I said, I want everybody at the meeting. This is a focus group. Okay, well, what does that mean? I want everybody's opinion about what you're going to see in the presentation, because from that, the more information we get, the better we are to have that trajectory to launch the brand concept. So in what you're speaking of, last week, it was architect, myself, my office, operations guy, and equipment guy all together. And it was a perfect collaboration, because what happens is one is referencing and reinforcing or pushing back on what someone else does, and you always get sort of that consolidation of an idea when you have all those players together. And sometimes that happens independently, and I'm not sure that's the best thing, and I'm sure it would work, but the more players in the organization, in the operations side and the equipment side, really important.
And would you say that it even comes down to, for you, understanding that workout style? So if you've got an area and it's going to be more like a kind of strength training area, or you've got a yoga, are those things that are really important for you to understand what they're actually going to be doing in those spaces?
Oh yeah, the client sometimes there's a gray area where the developers aren't even sure of exactly what they want to position, what they want to market, what their amenities are going to be. And so I had this conversation with somebody a week ago, and they said, well, we want to bring children in through the side and the kids area. I says, if you do that, your other idea for B is now moot. It's not going to work, because the kids and the volume and the noise is going to detract from this other thing that you want to do. And he goes, and I said, listen, I can tell you what you want to hear, or I can tell you what I think is the right thing. And so it was really good. He understood that, and we pushed off away from the kids club. There's a lot to go on. There's a lot that has to happen. What's exciting is new people are coming out of like different places for us. And these are people that are have been in the industry for a while, that are playing in the industry, but they know that they have to get out of what's happening now, and they have to rise to another level. So it's exciting because there's some new people coming in. We find that the new guys that are coming in really understand what we're doing, but the guys that are in the industry now don't understand it. I'll be at, like, for example, the URSA, the trade show, and our images are up, and some people scratch their head. They don't even get it, and that's okay. But the guys that get it. So,
do you think that's
fun.
Because from a business and revenue perspective, which I guess is going to be the key driver because it's not cheap?
Fear, hashtag fear. Yeah, they're afraid to move towards something that they're unaccustomed to. Yeah. They want to stay with what's safe. And so I like the fearless guys. Yeah,
but do you think there's demonstrable, if that's a word, benefits of, because for me it sounds like, okay, well, if I was going to do it now, when I've never thought about it, but it would make sense to kind of be very integrated. Your Instagram, your head of programming, your equipment, and then your architect. Having all these people together seems to make sense because it's all going to feed off each other, but it doesn't happen. Do you think, or have you got examples where you can show that, the business that does this compared to this is actually going to be around for longer, get more people in the doors and make more money?
I have a club in Manhattan that I did 10 years ago, and you look at the club and you're like, wow, this place is amazing. It was done 10 years ago. So the fee and the design has sustained itself. The fee has amortized over 10 years, but the design looks like it was done today. It's still futuristic. It's still really cool.
Right.
Doesn't look like a 1.0 or a 2.0 gym. And the owner just said it. He says it still looks the same.
Timeless.
Yeah, it's timeless. And I think that's an important factor that you have to think. And think it from an investment point. So you invest in the build out, you invest in the design fees, architectural, all of this. And then you can amortize that over 10 or 20 years.
And 20, you say 20 years, but when I started my business, and I'm guessing it's around about we started our business 20 years ago, and this came along not long after, and there's a New York designer actually, and he designed a place called the Third Space in London, which is still there, and even if you go into it today, it still looks as cool as it did almost 20 years ago.
Yes, exactly.
And you're right, it is pretty clever, but they always, whenever they used to bring people to Europe and do club tours, they always just take them there because it was different.
Right,
Now,
right.
the equipment in there probably wasn't that much different, and there was a few cool things about it, but a lot of it, he had this big, beautiful, sweeping red reception desk, which apparently cost a fortune, and it goes back to
that's
what
the
you
80-20 rule. That's the 80-20 rule. So yeah, the internet has really leveled the playing field. It's given gym developers an ability to look at a market on a global scale. You couldn't do that 20 years or 10 years ago.
No.
You couldn't do that. So I think really, the developers that are going to change things are the ones that really are fearless and really want to move into this new territory. You're carving new space. It was like, what was his name? Henry Ford. He said, if I gave people what they wanted, they'd have a faster horse.
Yeah.
So there's a great story. And this might encapsulate a lot what I'm saying. In 1997, I'm going to paraphrase everyone. 1997, approximately, the MP3 player was developed in the electronics industry. MP3 player, Walkman, digital music devices,
Right.
small. And all the market competitors, at the time, again, I'm paraphrasing, Motorola, Samsung, I don't remember, Toshiba, whoever was out there, were all vying for that market share of that customer for the MP3 player. 2003, Apple came out with the iPod. I don't know if you remember the iPod.
Yeah, I do. I have.
It was a narrow anodized aluminum, pink blue black, gold, silver, gorgeous, bright colors. 2003, that was like, what, 5 years, 6 years, after the MP3 player came out. By 2007, Apple had 22 billion in market share. They eviscerated the MP3 player. And the philosophy is design matters. Guy Kawasaki, who I talked about earlier, says we create the sexiest packages for our products. Well, look at it, how successful they are. And so that's sort of philosophy that I give to the developers I'm working with. I show them the story. I show them the MP3 player. And when the iPod came on the scene, all the MP3 players went onto eBay and into desk drawers. And Apple dominated the entire marketplace. They took it. And so this is sort of the philosophy, the narrative, the design think that I'm trying to get the developers that I'm working with to understand. And I'm not as clear maybe in my marketing and my descriptions in my podcast when I describe these things, but I'm getting better. I'm getting to understand better what the developer needs to move his brand in that direction. And there's going to be a shift. It's already happening in any industry, aerospace, automobiles, fashion, clothing, furniture, whatever. There's always a shift. So why not be the guy in the front lane?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put our people our developers in the fast lane.
And do you think you could take like an existing brand that, I won't put any names out, but like a brand that's probably been around for a period of time, probably getting a little bit dusty and a bit irrelevant, but maintaining their DNA and sort of pimping it up as such?
Totally. We have somebody now we're talking to about that, but it's hard because the bigger the brand, the more resistance to change across what's worked. But yes, you can do that. You can keep the brand identity, but modernize it, and not necessarily changing the logo, but you can keep the whole brand color scheme, the concepts. You know, a lot of people made a lot of disparaging comments about Planet Fitness. So I'm going to talk about Planet Fitness. They were brilliant with their design. While everybody was beating them up, I was studying what they were doing. The purple and yellow, those are complementary color schemes in the color wheel. Color wheel, I think, was developed by Isaac Newton. Color wheel shows all the colors in the rainbow, and it shows the relationships from colors next to each other and opposite of each other. And so Planet Fitness picked purple and yellow, which are called complementary color schemes. What happens is physiologically they cancel each other out. So it might be purple is garish on its own and yellow on, and they are, but there's something about it that works. Now, one of their logos was this big gear, like a gear with all the teeth on it. And look at that, it's like, that was really interesting because what I read into that from sort of an intellectual sort of idea was that this gear that they were using was a tinker toy from the kids' play, the kids' toy sets. Well, it's very juvenile. Right. It's very safe. You're very comfortable with that. So look at the target customer. They give them this garish color scheme, really sophisticated, juvenile, and not meaning malicious, with a tinker toy gear. It's appealing to their inner child. It's brilliant. Where people are beating up Equinoxes, that's brilliant marketing. I wouldn't do purple. I would do purple and yellow different. But maybe it's time they did a second tier product. They came up with something. But again, here's what I'm saying. You know, all the colors, everything matters. You know, and so one of the things that's really interesting is when we get with a developer, it's so funny that their sales staff and their floor people get really excited when they hear that we're talking with them, because I think what it is they recognize that they're going to have more ammunition to do what they need to do to sell, to market, to train. And so it's a really interesting thing that I see the people sort of on the day-to-day operation sides really excited about if they hear we're coming in to talk with ownership. And that's interesting because what you're happening is it's not always top down, it's bottom up. You know, and so when you get the staff that's starting to say, oh yeah, he's coming, and you know, we get equipment guys that call us, dude. It's kind of fun because they're very passionate and they know that in order for them to do their job and drive their own personal revenues, they need more tools. And so I think they recognize that this kind of conceptual next generation gym models that we're trying to help the developers move into also works for the staff because it brings them along for the ride. They ride on with that, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the obvious mistakes that are still being made? You know, when you go in, it's like, you know, if you're going to do something, just get these few things sorted out.
Green AstroTurf.
Really?
You know, I've been blogging about green AstroTurf for about 6 months now. And, you know, it's funny, we did a gym. Maybe you can put it up in the images. You guys can put it up in the images. And what we did is, this is the developer said, I want to be 50 years ahead of everybody else. And we took out the green AstroTurf and we put 5 different colors in the AstroTurf. We did, I think it was white, yellow, like a turquoise blue, pink, and a gray. And we put them in 5 different lanes. And it was awesome. And then everybody was scratching their heads. They had never seen AstroTurf used in that sort of as an aesthetic in a gym. Last week, I saw somebody, they were in Europe and the Middle East. They literally copied the 5 colors and they put it in the gym. And I was flattered. The point that I'm making is, yeah, so for example, if you're holding on to these antiquated, obsolete design trends, concepts, ideas, aesthetics, green AstroTurf, lighting that looks like it's from Home Depot, big box lighting, a stripe on the wall. People are putting stripes on the wall. Or in the boutique side, they'll put wood on the wall, a wood reception desk, granite floors, white lock. I mean, I can knock them off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not bad, but if you want to be differentiated, don't do what everybody else is doing. Why are you doing that? And it's hard to get into people's heads. I call it design narrative, design think. You know, get out of doing what everybody else is doing. And when I show them green AstroTurf and wood on the walls and a chandelier above the reception desk or a wood reception desk and white lockers and a retail display that looks like it was in luxury department stores, dude, come on. Come on, everybody's doing that. So, and again, not to be malicious, it's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing. It's not a differentiation feature. It doesn't put you against your mark. It doesn't elevate you above so you can eclipse your competitors. If you're in a glutted marketplace doing the same design, you're in a competition lane. Why do you want to compete? Why do you want to compete? You want to be ahead of everybody. You want people chasing after you. You don't want to be doing what everybody is. What are you going to market on? Price? That's what happened. Everybody was doing the same design, same business model. And then what happened? We had price wars. So if you can't beat them on design, if your design is the same as theirs, and you're offering treadmills and equipment, or now you're just doing, let's say, treadmills, a rower, and a punching bag, you know, if everybody else is doing, what's your price point? Be good on your marketing. Your sales staff. Design at one time, what I do, conceptual design, really wasn't a big factor in developing a brand, but now it is. And again, that goes back to the internet and social media and Instagram and Pinterest. And design now has become a really predominant component of creating a unique, innovative, differentiated gym brand.
Yeah, because I've seen some of your designs, and they kind of almost imprint on my mind. It's like I know exactly where that is, what that is, and you know, you kind of see the pictures. And I suppose I follow all different gym concepts on Pinterest and Instagram. Look at all of them, and again, a lot of them I would agree. I've never thought about it, but I would agree. When you look at them, you don't really know what gym, when I see my equipment, you don't always know what gym it's in.
Yes.
But when you see some of your gyms, oh yeah, I know exactly where that one is. And if you don't, you can kind of quickly find it out. And I suppose, would you say then that design becomes its own marketing, which makes your marketing work harder?
Different. This is interesting. So this is a nuance. This is really tricky. So as an analogy, look at David Barton. Very cool brand. You love them or hate them, everybody had their sort of position on them. But from a creative platform, what was really interesting about David Barton was what they did is all their gyms were different, but yet you knew they were David Barton. They all had this sort of sophisticated sort of blend of different design aesthetics, but there was this sort of brand ethos, DNA, if you will. And so I'm finding that some of the people that I'm working with understand that. So we're working on number 3 for somebody. Number 2 was entirely different than number 1. Entirely different color scheme, but when you look at the lighting and you look at the graphics and you look at the club, you say, yeah, that's him. And so the third one is going to be different than the other 2, but still you know. And I think what's good about that is that you keep the consumer sort of like, whoa, you know, they're doing this now. And so what you're doing is building brand loyalty. And again, for the fitness consumer who's what I call design savvy. And they're design savvy. They're now the arbiters of what's good design and what's not, what HGTV, and again, all the social media platforms. The fitness consumers are very savvy and they know what good design is. So that was just a nuance about, yeah, your brand is different between clubs, but it's your same brand.
There's a signature there.
Yeah, there's a signature DNA, I call that. Yeah.
So what about if you're probably, I guess, a smaller startup that doesn't have a huge budget? You know, are there ways that you could still pull that off without, you know, kind of breaking the bank?
Yeah, well, you know, you can, and you can do it a couple of ways, and we have these conversations. And, you know, I admire these people because they know what they want, but they don't have within their grasp the ability to do that. I say, okay, here's how we can do it. We can do it in phases. Focus on your reception area right now, your 80-20 rule. They totally get it. Okay, then we can work on the training floor, then we can work on other parts of the clubs. So this is one way to do it. So you can work, a developer can do it in phases, okay? There's another thing that you can do is, you can create sort of an inexpensive build out by being really smart with paint and lighting.
Right.
So one of the things that we try to do is in our paint schemes is we try to create these envelopes that you don't have a white wall and a wood back wall and a black ceiling and a different color floor. So we try to create a canvas. And so what we're doing is like a painter, you have your canvas. So from a 3-dimensional factor, what we try to do is create the spaces so that the background disappears. It's the background canvas, but that's where that beautiful reception desk stands out. And so it becomes the focal point for the members when you come in, but enough of the canvas is beautifully, simply lit that brings the experience up. So you can create an experience with a lower budget.
Right.
That's just one little trick. There's lots of tricks. There's lots of materials. One of the things about design finishes, nobody talks about design finishes. Number 1, never, ever, ever buy your design finishes, flooring, wall covering, lighting fixtures from the big box department stores. Your members shop there, they see them in all the advertising. You do not want those finishes and features in your gym. The internet has such an array of products to choose from flooring to lighting. There's trade shows that you can go to, even though I have this sort of love-hate relationship with the trade shows to source products for your gym. For example, designers from all over the world go to a trade show, they see all the same lighting fixtures, the same flooring, the same wall coverings, the same furniture, and they pick this one from this one and this one. And all of a sudden you start to see gyms are starting to have, oh, they have that light fixture. It's because I recognize it immediately. I see what's happening. What they're doing is they're picking and pulling and putting pieces together, and that's the aesthetic. There's no effort to be conceptual. So I went sideways. I always started to talk about design finish. Don't use anything from the big box suppliers. If all the designers are shopping at the same trade shows and using the same fixtures and putting them in differently, and different ones from different places, that's better sameness. Okay? So if you have to, be completely crazy. Go buy epoxy paint for your floor and do your floor black, or do it white, or do it red, but do your walls red and do your ceilings red. And then get some really cool light fixtures from Indonesia or someplace and put them in your gym and you're going. So my theory, what I'm saying is here, is stop doing what everybody's doing. You know, be fearless, be conceptual. Another one of our gyms was inspired by the film Ultraviolet. It was sort of a Mila Jovovich, you know who she is? I think she was in a lot of these films, and it was sort of a science fiction, futuristic theme. And so we took the design of the gym, and there's all kinds of features in the gym that were inspired by the film. So what I'm saying to your readership or your followers is to think conceptually. Don't look at a gym design magazine or a hotel magazine and say, oh, I like that design, and then do your version of that. That's better sameness.
Yeah.
Be conceptual, be fearless, be experimental, be exploratory. Don't keep doing the same thing. Always, always, always push for the extreme. Go to the edge, off the grid, nonconformity. Think, create conceptually. You see, I'm very like.
I love it. Yeah, and it when you're starting to explain it, it starts to make sense a lot. And it's strange that so many people, and you know, I guess we've all had it, come and they want to do something like someone else. And I suppose it's like, well, you know, if you explore that, why do you want to do that? Well, maybe because you see what someone else is doing and you see success, and you think, if I do that, then I'll have success, which I guess kind of makes some logic. But I suppose what you're saying, which makes a lot more logic, is look, you know, if you want to stand out and get noticed and be successful, why be a, you know, better sameness? Is that what you
Better
said?
sameness.
Yeah, well,
better sameness.
And it's very logical. It's like, just go over here, you know, whether people like it or not, you're going to stand out and you're going to get noticed. And it's
well, here's the thing. Okay, so you love that aesthetic that your competitor has. So you retain your design agency to do some version of that. And they'll do better sameness. They'll get you different lighting, different flooring, different furniture, something, and then you open your brand. 6 months, 24 months, they come to your town, 3 miles away. They drop their gym in that looks somewhat like you're looking like each other. Yeah. It's better. You're not differentiated anymore. Yeah. And so there's another component. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So if you're doing you're blurring your brand and you're doing what everybody else is doing, and then your competitor comes to you, near you, and another competitor, and you're all kind of the same. And the boutiques do this a lot. There's a lot of like grinding, blurring, fighting, and that's what I said. Don't be a competitor. Be outside. There's a component to some of the things that we do that I explained, which is, if you can be the guy that builds one of these next generation conceptual gyms, they can't copy that. How do you copy that? It's all entirely organic to the brand. The materials, the lighting, the finishes, the colors, everything is organic. You can't go out to the trade shows and find those things because it's conceptually developed. We go outside the gym industry and we source things, aerospace industry, automotive industry. People don't know that. So all these other things are happening. So if you build that brand in your demographic and you're king of the mountain, who's going to come in and bump you out? Yeah. It's going to be hard to bump out a guy like that.
And also, I guess if there's a genuine, it's wrapped around the genuine philosophy and story as well.
Yes.
So it's totally integrated.
Yes,
that's
totally
even
integrated.
More difficult.
Totally integrated, yeah. Social community outreach. Yeah. You know, you hear so much about differentiation in the fitness industry. And I get it, I understand, you know. And then you hear all this about retention and return on investment. And then, okay, you're talking about retention? Okay, well, what happens if you're building a gym and somebody opens up 6 months from you and their gym is like yours, but theirs is newer, where your member's gonna go? They're gonna go to the newer gym that looks a little bit better, sameness than yours. That's why you have retention problems. You won't have retention problems if your brand on and the whole platform, your marketing, your advertising, your service, your products, your design, your social media is so innovative and by itself, nobody can come into that zone. Personally, my own objections are what I believe is the encroachment of technology in the fitness space. There is so much push for technology this and technology that, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I've made enemies already with people about that. And I'm not here to make a battle. What I'm here to say is we're selling fitness and wellness. Have you not seen what iPhone or smartphones have done to consumers, to the public? Car accidents, all kinds of social stigmas. There's so much, and again, I'm sorry, but I'm really passionate about this because I have other personal beliefs. When I see fitness industry, the industry advocating for facial recognition in gyms, biomarkers, chip implants, I cannot believe it. We're selling fitness, health, and wellness. Wellness is becoming the big talking point now. It's sort of evolving. And so when I see this, every client, every developer that I work with, we don't talk about technology. It's never on the drawing board. But the industry is pushing it. And again, I know I'm going to get pushed back. I believe there's enough technology that we need to help operate the gym, but we don't need an app to follow us to the department store, how many steps we've taken, a wearable, how many calories we're taking. Are you kidding me? Go back to the basics. I believe in the core ideology. I'm very passionate. I was a bodybuilder. And I was always a natural bodybuilder. And so I was in the gym with some of the big guys. Great, that's good, I love it, it's great. But it's not the best thing you can be doing for yourself. I'm into, a natural, healthy, green diet and meditation and exercising the muscles and the mind-body connection. And then I see this sort of push, and let's say it's coming from Silicon Valley, whatever. But it's an intrusion on the ideology of fitness. I have a developer I'm working with now. We're going to put cell phone lockers in the front of the gym, and you have to leave them in the locker before you go into the gym. It was like the cowboys in the Old West. You leave your gun at the bar, okay? But I'm just telling you, what's that connection? What's that experience with the personal trainer and the person's has their phone there and they're waiting for the call. It's a
so your view
thing.
is that, like, really in that space, it's it's tech free.
It's sacred.
Right.
Howard Schultz at Starbucks had an expression. He talked about Starbucks being that third place between work and home that people would go to. I really think that the fitness industry has that, being the fourth place between work and home and Starbucks. And so I think if you could create these spaces, these conceptual next generation gyms that I'm talking about, we can get back to social spaces where we can get back to fitness, back to humanity, back to wellness. And so all the things that sort of what I'm doing to, there's a lot of layers that I'm working on and I'm trying to integrate. And so what I'm trying to do is get back to the basics and think like Disney, make entertainment spaces. Make your gym fitness entertainment spaces that people marvel. I had a guy say to me, I don't want to leave this gym when I come here. That's such a compliment, And so, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help ultimately B2B, me to the developer, but it's really B to C. And so when I'm working with the developers, I'm trying to think past, you're not working with me. What I'm trying to do is put you in touch with the psychology and the trigger points and amygdala of the consumer. The amygdala. Okay, so, I just blogged about this recently where I said, retention and consumer loyalty is in the amygdala. What you do is you trigger the consumer to fall in love and be comfortable and at peace in this space. And so that's what we're trying to do. And it's a little arcane, if that's the word, but it's a great place to be in because it's not better sameness.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a better way to look at it, because at the end of the day, fitness it's difficult, it's painful, not everybody enjoys to do it, not everybody enjoys going into that place. So if you can get people to fall in love with being in somewhere so that they can whatever, I think that's an interesting, direction to go down.
Yeah, I mean, the society is so fragmented, and we're getting social now, we're getting outside design, but our society is so fragmented and polarized into, I'm working on other things in my personal life, and, I want to bring people back together, and it doesn't matter if you're doing CrossFit or you're in a big box. But I want to help the developers create spaces that their members fall in love with and they want to stay loyal to. And then, so there's sort of a higher mission, if you will, if that makes sense, for a designer. I don't know. So you're smiling. I guess that's. I
like it. I love it. So look. Before I've got one more question, but before that, I'm sure there's going to be people that are interested in this and want to find out more and maybe want to get into a conversation. How do people get in touch with you? And
Instagram. And
we will put it on the notes, but what's your Instagram handle?
Gym Designer, one word. Gym Designer, one word. No hyphens. Gym Designer, one word. And it's Cuoco Black. But thank you if you follow me. I appreciate it. But I mean, if you swipe our page, if you don't get it in the first swipe, then it's not a fit. We get a lot of people, oh my gosh, and then they float away. But the ones that I talked about, the fearless, the people that want to do the next generation new things, they're the ones who, are really, I think they're what we call the blue ocean. We're trying to make that blue ocean space where nobody's in there. It's called white space. They call it white space too. Okay. So everybody's over here doing a muscle gym, and that's okay. Or you're doing a boutique studio, and that's okay too. But why not have your own ocean? Carve your own path. Create your own marketing, content. Unique, innovative marketing content that's branded. Again, it's all your talking points. It's how you market yourself on Instagram. So the blue ocean, I know you talked about this recently in one of your podcasts, and you got a lot of results on that. I think that was awesome because you're saying, and I think the reason a lot of people resonated to that because they understood the long-term meaning of that, which is blue ocean is where you want to be. Red ocean is where everybody's sort of fighting. And I talk about being in your own lane. And blue ocean white space is where you want to go. And that's what we're trying to help developers and pull them out of that, what they call a scrum, S-C-R-U-M, scrum, pull them out of the scrum and put them in their own lanes.
Yeah, and it's certainly a common thread with quite a few people I've spoke to, seem to be saying that same thing. We're not doing ourselves any favors, we're all competing in this, in a very similar way to very similar people with the green turf thing makes me laugh, even though we do sell a lot of green turf. When you start processing that, it's like, actually, it's a bit crazy.
It is. When you start thinking about it, it's like, wow, how many? You see green turf, you're in the gym. So
it's almost become a staple, like a treadmill.
Yes, exactly.
So, final question then: escape your limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and gone on to make possible, or other people have said is impossible. What would be a recent or memorable example of you escaping your own personal limits?
My own personal limits? Oh, there's a lot of them. It goes back to just what I preceded with about trying to bring humanity back into fitness and health and wellness, and I see what's happening in the world. I mean, you hate me or love me, but I've moved back to my spiritual Roman Catholic roots, and it's changed my life. Amazing. I've got so much clarity, and again, some people can laugh. There's a lot of secularists that don't have a God-fearing belief. I just think that all the things that I'm doing, it's not me. It's a gift, and I'm doing that, and I'm trying to help others. So that's sort of the mission is, help others, help others succeed. And I think that's it. I think the shift for me was to get back to what's called logos or morality, which is like, what's the truth? And so that's why I was so, what's the word, hostile towards the technology. Because the truth for me, my truth, is that's hurting people. And so the truth is, do good by the fitness consumer. Care, really care. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk, everybody knows Gary. He says, care about the consumer. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the developers. I'm saying, here, your consumers will eat this up, and they are. And it's starting. And I'm here because the momentum's catching up. Yeah. So that's it. And I'm very flattered and thankful to be here. I mean, following Frank Zane and was it Angel Banos and so many others. I'm sorry I can't name everybody, but you had a lot of A players here, and to be in this sphere or this orbit is really an honor. So thanks.
Well, Cuoco, thank you very much for your time. It's certainly got me thinking, and I'm sure I'd love to hear from people who are listening to this what they think. You've challenged a lot of sort of common trends that are out there, and I think there's some really good food for thought. So I really appreciate you taking the time and coming and seeing me today.
It was great.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.